Hi, in this video we'll be discussing how to give a proper review on a VITA return, giving proper feedback, and also discussing various tax resources that may prove helpful in the VITA site. In our first scene, we'll be having a mock review where Allie, the experienced reviewer, will be showing Sophia, the new reviewer, how to properly give a review on a VITA return.
When first reviewing a tax return, I look at the client's intake forms, their driver's license, and their social security number to just make sure that everything lines up and that the information that they have given me matches what the preparer has put on the tax return. So first, I make sure that the first name, the last name, and their social security number is the same. And in this case, it does verify and match. So then we move on to the address, and I make sure that the address matches as well. And like I said, I check this before to make sure that it matches. Moving on, we want to make sure that we mark the correct filing status. So this client is actually filing single. And then we move on to make sure that they are not getting claimed on a tax return of someone else. So we want to make sure that they are claiming themselves, and in this case they are. And next we move on to the income item. So I just look in this total section to make sure that everything lines up first before I tie out my numbers to the W-2s and any documents the client may have. Okay, now when we look onto the income, we're looking at the wages, and we can see that this client has $23,000 in wages, and I just want to make sure that the W-2 that I have provided from the client is indeed the amount that we have matching on the income. And I verified that, and it does match, so we are good on that aspect. Sometimes a client may have dividends or interest, so we want to look at the interest line, and in this case the client does not have interest, so I do not have to check that, and I verified on my intake form that they do not have interest as well. So moving on, we can kind of scroll down here and we look at the total income that they have, which is only the wages that they showed on the W-2. We move on to the adjusted gross income, and in this case this client does not have any extra information that we would need to input on the tax return at this time. Sometimes they may have an IRA deduction, or they may have some extra expenses here that we can take off of the adjusted gross income, but in this case we do not. So we move on, and now we move on to the tax credits. So looking at this, we can see that the client did take the standard deduction. We want to make sure that they're not missing anything, and if they could take the itemized deduction, we would want to take that. But in this case, we're just taking the standard deduction of the $6,300. We have total taxable income on line 43 that we want to look at just to make sure that everything matches up with what we expected. Moving down, we can see that this client actually had an education credit, so we want to look at additional forms off of the 1040 to make sure that the education credit is correct, and we want to verify with the client that they can take a lifetime learning credit or the American Opportunity Credit, which is presented below. So we want to make sure that they're qualifying for the correct credits. We can look at this on the intake form, and we can also verify with the client as well to make sure that they had not taken the American Opportunity Credit in the last 4 years, or that they, in this case, qualify for the Lifetime Learning Credit. We move down to other taxes, and in this case, this client does not have any other taxes, so we keep moving on to the payments that they made. We can verify the federal income tax withheld, which is off of their W-2, so we look at this, and it's about $3,700, and it indeed matches their W-2 that they have provided for us. Like I said above, we did not take the American Opportunity Credit. We decided to take the Lifetime Learning Credit because they had used up the American Opportunity Credit in the past 4 years, so they had to take the Lifetime Learning Credit, and I verified that with the client as well. Moving on, this client is getting a refund of about $3,700, which is the withholding that they had because their tax netted out to zero after their credit of the Lifetime Learning Credit. So we look, and I made sure that their routing number matches, and I also made sure that the client signed the form telling us that indeed their routing number did match to their bank account, so that we are not liable and we match the numbers correctly. Moving on, this is the rest of the 1040. We have our paid preparer, and we sign the return as UW-Whitewater VITA, and we go out to the client and we explain everything that I just did right now, looking at the review to the client so they understand everything. After looking at the Wisconsin return and the federal return, we would just want to make a high-level review on all the extra documentation that's provided in the return as well. So we want to look at the extra forms that correspond with the line items showing on our 1040. And we would just want to make sure that everything is correct at a high-level view as well, and make sure that the client understands all the line items presented to them. And we can go from there.
Here are a few tips on how to deliver proper feedback to the preparer. First, avoid using negative language that could insult the preparer. These examples could include using words as messy or sloppy, as this can insult the preparer. Next, plan on what you want to say with the preparer, so do not just wing it. For example, make a list of pros and cons that you come across while preparing the return, as this will allow you for a better discussion with the preparer. Be direct with the preparer, and do not use words that will offend them, such as, "This was wrong," or "You did not do this correctly." Use alternative language such as, "You're on the right track, however, this is a better use or better way you can solve the problem." Also, give future-focused feedback, as you cannot change the past. However, you can provide tips for the preparer so they do not make the same mistakes again. And here is an example of these tips put into action. Hi Ryan, so I reviewed your return and I just want to discuss with you how you did. Overall, you did a great job entering the client information, the W-2 information, and the interest income all looked great. There was one item that I wanted to discuss, was the earned income credit. You were on the right track when calculating the credit, however, this specific client does not qualify due to the income limitations. This credit can be difficult when you are first dealing with it, so a resource I recommend and I use is the Earned Income Credit Publication 596, and Rule 15 specifically lays out these income limitations that relates to this client, so that might be helpful to use in the future.
Okay, great, thank you. That was helpful feedback. I had some other struggles during the preparing process. Do you recommend any other resources while I'm at the VITA site?
Here are a few tax resources that you may find helpful when preparing and reviewing tax returns in the VITA clinic. IRS publications may be a useful tool when finding different tax issues. For example, Publication 596 helped me with the earned income credit limitations. Tax form instructions may be helpful when dealing with specific states. For example, Wisconsin has different addition and subtraction codes, and the form instructions help decipher what those codes are. You can also ask your tax instructor questions if they are available. Tax journals, articles, and commentary are another useful tool. Lastly, your CPA review material may be a useful tool as well. It is important for you to check the dates on the research you find and make sure you are using reliable sources.
I hope these topics in this video have helped you during the VITA clinic. Thanks for watching.